The Relevance of Babasaheb Dr. Ambedkar in Contemporary Anthropology, chaired by Professor Shomir Kumar Das, who is currently Professor of Political Science and also holding the post of Director of the Institute of Foreign Policy Studies at the University of Calcutta. I would like to welcome Professor Shomir Kumar Das to our department to chair the current session, that is the third session of the international seminar. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
With Honorable Chair's due permission and on his behalf, I would like to initiate this session forward. In this session, we have two invited speakers. Our first esteemed speaker is Professor P.C. Joshi. He will be joining us online, and I would like to welcome Professor P.C. Joshi to our session on this international seminar of this department. With the permission of Honorable Chair, I would like to introduce our first esteemed speaker of this session, Professor Puran Chand Joshi, who is a senior retired professor in anthropology with an expansive teaching experience of more than 35 years, and he was also former acting Vice Chancellor of University of Delhi. Professor Joshi is a leading medical anthropologist in South Asia. Besides, his insight extends to anthropology of disaster, anthropology of development, anthropology of mountain communities, public health, and other social issues related to social marginalization. He was the first president of Society of Indian Medical Anthropology and executive member of the Ethnographic and Folk Culture Society based on Lucknow, India. Professor P.C. Joshi is also considered to be a distinguished voice for anthropologists and researchers from other fields around the world, and he goes beyond the academia and reaches out the communities to empower and create awareness. All this make Professor Joshi's gracious presence in this international seminar on the relevance of Babasaheb Dr. Ambedkar in contemporary anthropology more pertinent for current discourse. Without delaying further, now I would like to hand over the online podium to Professor Joshi to initiate the third session of this international seminar chaired by Professor Shomir Kumar Das. Now, sir, you can. Professor Das, you can initiate the current session of this international seminar.
Yes, I have been facing some bit of audio issues at my end, but I can hear you at this point. And it's my pleasure to invite Professor P.C. Joshi to deliver his lecture. This will be followed by the lecture uh, to be delivered by Dr. Manikanta. So we will take both these lectures together. Both these lectures will be discussed at the end. So keep your questions and raise your questions and offer your comments after the two presentations. So it's over to Professor Joshi.
Thank you very much, Professor Das, Professor Bakshi, and all other distinguished scholars and anthropologists. It is indeed a great honor for me that I have been invited to take part in this, I would say, historical conference. It is historical because a lot has been written about Babasaheb Bhimrao Ramoji, and he has been primarily portrayed as the architect of constitution, economist, and legal luminary. But he initially started his intellectual journey under the tutelage of Alexander A. Goldenweiser and Franz Uri Boas, the great intellectuals, the great anthropologists of America of that time. He visited America between 1913 to 1916. And I think rather at that time, most of the people were going to England for higher studies. and Babasaheb chose to go to America. Rightly so. I think Franz Boas was a very, very impactful intellectual of that time, somebody who was born a Jew and had, I would say, original ideas against the racism of that time. And Babasaheb Ambedkar, I think, learned the lessons, core lessons of anthropology, which is, of course, cultural relativism. And I think that stayed with him throughout his life. So anthropology had an impact on his intellectual deliberations, and therefore he was truly an intellectual who could think about an inclusive society, which is amply reflected in our great constitution, the Constitution of India. Now, Babasaheb, while he was in Columbia University, a very famous seminar that he gave, which was, of course, later on printed in Indian Antiquity. And this particular seminar was titled Caste in India, Its Mechanism, Origin and Development. And I think in this particular article, Babasaheb had put his ideas. And although I would like to underline this point very much, this point that in India we have had a lot of people talking about caste system and various aspects of caste, from dominant caste to Sanskritization to caste and to jati and varna, homo hierarchicus, and so many aspects of caste have been delivered in India. And Babasaheb, who had written a very seminal paper, as early as 9th May 1916, to be more precise. But unfortunately, it has not been taken up seriously. So last year, so I think this year itself, when I had a fortune of meeting Professor Bakshi in Delhi, I said, Professor Bakshi, Babasaheb and anthropology, relevance of Babasaheb to anthropology is a very, very long overdue topic to be delivered upon. And I'm very grateful to him that he is giving due respect to the anthropological aspect of Babasaheb. And I think this, in this sense, this particular meeting of minds is very, very historical and crucial. Now, I would like to start by saying in anthropology we talk of emic view and ethic. I think Babasaheb represents the emic view of caste. He was at the receiving end of caste. And all other scholars, whether it was Govind Sadasiv Ghurye, the father of sociology in India, who has written on caste and class, and who has said that Ambedkar has also written, who is a scheduled caste. So rather than his ideas, even unfortunately, Ghurye has focused upon the caste of Babasaheb. He was a Saraswat Brahmin. We must understand, like Saraswat Brahmin Ghurye was. Then we have Mysore Narasimhachar Srinivas, who has written on caste, popularly known as M.N. Srinivas, who was a Mysore Brahmin, a practicing Mysore Brahmin. We had Sridhar Venkatesh Ketkar, the person who was quoted by Babasaheb Ambedkar in his lecture, in his seminar as well. Ketkar was a Chitpavan Brahmin. We have Triloki Nath Madan, again, Kashmiri Pandit or Kashmiri Brahmin. We have Shamacharan Dubey, who is a Tanya-Kubja Brahmin. So we have all stalwart writing on caste, and they are all high, high Brahmins, high Brahmin, Chitpavan Brahmin, Kanyakubja Brahmin, and all those kind of Brahmins. And there we have Babasaheb, who is writing on caste, and I think who is giving original ideas on caste, who is talking about the crux of caste and crux of, and later on, of course, untouchability as well. And he found, and he argues in his paper that it is the endogamy which is at the core of caste. And we have to understand this endogamy, this business of endogamy, or this mechanism of this endogamy, if we really want to get rid of caste, which of course is a very, very oppressive. I have no hesitation in accepting that caste is a form of racism. After all, racism is, what is racism? Is it based on color? Caste is also, varna. After all, varna in meaning of varna is color. So it is, I would say, caste is like racism. It is a form of racism. And Babasaheb would like to call it as a form of racism. And Babasaheb was against it. But Babasaheb was a scholar. He did not have any bad feeling because he wanted to understand caste system in India. He wanted to understand the genesis of caste system in India. He wanted to understand the mechanism of caste system in India. And therefore he elaborated his thesis, and he said that in India, caste system exists because of two things: marriage, endogamy, and dining. These two things were there. And Babasaheb was somebody who has faced discrimination of caste. And you have to understand the caste. You can only understand the caste system or meanness of caste system, or what Babasaheb would like to call it as hoary institution. He named it hoary institution. Otherwise, caste system to the functionalists, to most of the people that I mentioned, they would all think of caste system as a kind of a beautiful reflection of division of labor and people enjoying their respective occupations, because occupation is linked to caste. But forgetting the insult, forgetting the ridicule that is inherent in caste. And I think Mahatma Gandhi had seen that, had faced that when he was in South Africa and he was forced to get down at Peter Marisburg. I think that was the kind of insult that Mahatma Gandhi had. And this was the insult which Ambedkar used to face day to day. At one point of time, he writes that he with his family was to go to Koregaon from railway station. And as soon as the station master heard, the station master learned that his caste is Mahar, all cart fellows, car drivers, they refused to take him. Although he had a lot of money, he was able to offer them double the fare, but still nobody would ready to take them on their cart. And they were allowed to take on their cart with one condition, that the car driver will walk and they will drive the cart. Then only at the double the cost they would do. But then on their way, it was dark and they wanted to eat. But nobody would offer them water. And in spite of that, Babasaheb writes, in spite of the fact that they had plenty of food, and he writes, I will just quote him, there was plenty of food with us. There was hunger burning within us. With all this, we would sleep without food. That was because we could get no water, and we could get no water because we were untouchables. So this was the kind of humiliation that Babasaheb has faced in his day-to-day life. And that humiliation continued, and therefore Babasaheb had. But then Babasaheb was not somebody who was biased, somebody who had grudge, somebody who has some kind of, axe to grind against the higher caste. He understood the higher caste and he said, I'm giving you my views. You can criticize me. So as a true scholar, Babasaheb in his seminar and later on as well offered his thesis to the world to be critically analyzed and even criticized. And Babasaheb therefore was a true scholar. And I think this particular quality of Babasaheb remained with him till end. And sometimes people think that Babasaheb was somebody who was, not liking Gandhi. No, I think Babasaheb was somebody like a true scholar who would differentiate between ideas and human beings, ideas and persons. And he would talk of ideas. He did not agree with Mahatma Gandhi because of his ideas. He had his own point of view, so he was critical. But he deeply respected Mahatma Gandhi. He deeply respected all other leaders. But he had his own point of view, and he would like to insist, he would like to argue, he would like to critically discuss the point of view. I think that was something which was there in Babasaheb. So what I'm trying to say here is that apart from writing on caste, apart from identifying endogamy as the main culprit in the maintenance, in the origin of caste system, and if you look into the whole seminar that he gave, I think at that time in India, we had Risley being the most popular anthropologist. And if you all remember, they gave his thesis where he linked nasal index or nose to the caste hierarchy. And he said, find the nose, higher the caste. Coarse the nose, lower the caste. In other words, if you have a long and fine nose, you are from high caste, and if you have a broad and short nose, you are from lower caste. That is the kind of idea that was used. Babasaheb was totally against these ideas. He said this is all nonsense. And at that time, I think he was the only person, because I remember all the intellectuals in Calcutta and in Delhi and all other places, they were very much impressed by these racial theories. In fact, many of the people, two persons I know, Professor P.C. Biswas and Iravati Karve, they had in fact gone to Germany to study under the great racists of that time, Eugen Fischer. So in amidst all these kind of people who were supporting this caste and races, who were supporting this race as being permanent identity and people being inferior because they belong to a particular kind of caste and all those things, there was a man like Babasaheb who challenged this thesis, and who challenged this thesis by offering his own point of view. Unfortunately, I have myself studied caste when I was a student, and I know I have talked to people who are teaching caste in anthropology. Even in Union Public Service Commission anthropology, I don't think there ever was any question on Babasaheb and caste, as if Babasaheb has not written anything. Babasaheb, in the beginning of his career, in the beginning of his intellectual career, had studied two papers under Golden Visor. And both the papers were on primitive ethnology. One paper was on primitive ethnology and physical environment. Another paper was on primitive ethnology, religion, social organization. And I think these two papers had a lifetime imprint on his mind. And if he was able to develop something, if he was able to give original ideas which shaped the destiny of this great nation, it was Babasaheb. Secondly, Babasaheb was against untouchability. He was against this practice of treating human beings as subhuman. And his theory is he gave the concept of broken man. And broken man, according to him, if I may quote him, he said, in a tribal war, it often happened that a tribe, instead of being completely annihilated, was defeated and routed. In many cases, a defeated tribe became broken into bits. As a consequence of this, there always existed in primitive times a floating population consisting of groups of broken tribesmen roaming all around. In fact, and they are not one or two. They are there are 500, 1,500 nomadic and semi-nomadic tribes, and there are 198 denotified tribes. So we have around 1,700 different groups, which are these floating populations, which were labeled as broken men by Ambedkar. And it is only in the last decade that we have started paying attention. Almost after 90 years of Ambedkar, we started paying attention to these people who are not few thousands, who are not few lakhs, who are not few. They are 15 crores. In other words, they are more than the scheduled tribes of our country. They are much more than the scheduled tribes of our country. They are floating populations. They are populations which are hidden populations. And I think Babasaheb talked of them as broken men. And I think that was another great contribution that Babasaheb made. And of course, Babasaheb was against caste system, but Babasaheb was particularly against Brahmanism within caste system. And he said it was the Brahmanism and the clash between Brahmanism and Buddhism which led to the emergence of population which later on became untouchables. So Babasaheb offered, I think, very, very potential theories as far as the caste system is concerned, as far as the practice of untouchability is concerned. And I think they're all these theories had anthropological angle to it. But unfortunately, anthropologists were oblivion. We were just silent to him. And at the most, we would call that Babasaheb was a scheduled caste. No, Babasaheb was a very, very conscientious, very, very mature, very, very critical scholar and anthropologist par excellence. I think today's seminar is historical. Again, I would say that it is giving due acknowledgement to Babasaheb. I'll be very glad if a day comes when Babasaheb becomes part of the syllabus, whether it is a syllabus on ethnology of India or it is a syllabus on caste system in India, caste and peasantry in India. Babasaheb's thesis of how caste system emerged, how these people who are roaming around were absorbed by people who are powerful, who are agriculturists. I think it has great potentials because genesis of caste system is still an open question to all of us. It is still an open question to anthropology. And Babasaheb was somebody who gave his thoughts, which needs to be, I think, further, although it is more than 100 years that Babasaheb's ideas were given, but there are still potentials, and I think we need to discuss, deliver upon those. So once again, I would like to congratulate the Bakshi and his team, and I think it is my privilege that I was also was a part of this great occasion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Joshi. I think you offered very important insights, which I'm sure will be taken up by the discussants later. Now I will request Dr. Monikanta to make his presentation.
Hello.
We can hear you, but you are not visible. Yes.
Yes. Sir, give me 10. Sir, give me 10 seconds. Give me 10 seconds.
Yes.
With the permission of Honorable Chair Professor Das of this session, I would like to introduce the current speaker, Shri Palikonda Manikanta, who is a Phule Ambedkarite activist. He worked actively with Bahujan Students Fund at University of Hyderabad. and Birsa Ambedkar Phule Students Association at Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi. He also worked as research assistant in National Dalit Movement for Justice along with National Campaign on Dalit Human Rights as well as Indian Social Institute at New Delhi. He is currently based in Telangana and working on the ground in these movements. His area of interest in research revolves around anti-caste thought, politics, politics of Hindu nationalism, Indian political thought and political processes and political culture in Telangana. This makes his presence fundamental in this international seminar on the relevance of Babasaheb Dr. Ambedkar in contemporary anthropology. I would like to hand over the online podium to the chair, Professor Das, of this present session.
Thank you for introducing Dr. Manikanto. I don't know whether he can hear
Sir.
us. He probably
Yes,
is-
sir.
Okay, but you are.
Sir, can you hear me?
We can hear you, but we cannot see you.
Uh,
But anyway, go ahead. If the connectivity is yes, but now you are visible.
okay, okay, sir. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, and Jai Bhim, everyone. It is a great, privilege for me. Firstly, to be part of this international seminar. Firstly, when Professor Das had called me, I was a bit shocked, and also, I had it was a lot of a scene of nervousness that I had, like someone from Kolkata, calling me and sort of inviting me for this seminar. But I thought I took it as a challenge because when we are doing, as a young student and scholar like me, understanding caste and dealing with its manifestation in terms of social, political, and economic, it is very much important for all of us to understand regarding its trajectory, transition, and manifestation. So I thought it would be a great opportunity for me to engage with this question. So in that context, I have framed my presentation something as this, that touching the sir, is this visible? Sir, is my screen visible?
No, it's not visible.
Sir?
No, we can't see the screen. We can see you, of course.
Oh, okay. Sir, I have shared the screen. I'm not.
Now you are visible. Yes, your screen is visible and you are also visible. We can hear you, so please go ahead. Everything
Yes, yes. Thank you, Professor Samir Kumar Das. Yeah. So, so I have framed my presentation as something like this, touching the untouched, caste, power, and recovering the legacy of Dr. Ambedkar in anthropology and sociology, right? So with this, I would just start my presentation with few remarks. So once again, I thank the Department of Anthropology for giving me this opportunity, and also Professor Samir Kumar Das, who is chairing this session. Sir, we have, grown up with, reading your works, especially, when the ICSSR political science volume was published. For all of us undergraduates and postgraduate students, it was a wonderful opportunity for us to engage with your scholarly work. So now, why I exactly framed my presentation as this, that what happens when you touch the untouched in the academia, or let me pose this question in another way, that why the untouched was not touched yet, right? So with this question, I would basically locate my presentation within the larger field of political sociology. I am a student of political science, but due to the interdisciplinary background that I had in my graduation in Hyderabad Central University, having gone through the readings in anthropology and sociology, I have engaged, in this topic in a very interdisciplinary manner, right? So, firstly, uh, when you understand the 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 topic of caste and power in academia, there is something that is very much inherent, especially in the field of sociology and anthropology, that everyone comes across. Now, in 1931, you have this statement made by Dr. Ambedkar to Gandhiji, that where Dr. Ambedkar said that, Gandhiji, I have no homeland. This was a very depressing statement to each one of the Indians who have, or the patriots, nationalists in Gandhiji's words. This was a very depressing statement when Ambedkar made this. Now, what happened, or how to understand this statement that Gandhiji, I have no homeland? See, the entire idea of space, the entire idea of time has become exclusionary, as you all know, because that was the time when the Indian National Congress was spearheading the nationalist movement. And this idea of space, this idea of time was obviously, it was a sovereign, nationalist and sacred. Sacred in the sense of a very, in a very Brahminical space-time. And so now from 1931 to till this date, if we understand that statement, probably we can, in understanding, while understanding caste and power in academia, probably we can reframe that sentence saying that Dr. Ambedkar still has no land in the academic world, because to be sovereign in a very nationalist sense, in a very sacred sense, is completely, for Ambedkar, it was completely of a constitutional morality. I mean, in that constitutional moral world, he has framed and reframed the idea of sovereign. As you all have, we all have listened to what Professor Samir Kumar Dutt had sort of argued in saying that even that creation of moral community is also something that is important to understand for a student of anthropology. Now, and taking this subject and expanding this subject in a very different way, for example, to understand in a subject called political sociology of Ambedkar, how do we do? How does a student or an anthropologist and sociologist do this? Because you have political sociology of Gandhi, you have political sociology of Nehru, and you have political sociology of Tagore, Lohia, and everyone, and that too in a very universal and intersectional perspective. And Dr. Ambedkar is one of that stalwart whose principles, whose ideas, and whose state of mind was completely universal and intersectional in nature. Everyone, I won't go into the caste and India genesis mechanism development paper, because the previous speakers have widely referred to it. But one thing that that paper gives, that important insight that it gives to the young students like me and to all of us, is that there is this caste and gender, I mean, that intersection was there, and vis-a-vis Dr. Ambedkar was trying to understand the idea of hegemony, the idea of force, and the idea of violence, right, through that intersection. So why this political sociology of Ambedkar, or that social anthropology of Ambedkar, is not possible, or why haven't we realized it yet? So this question comes very important, that why it was discarded or why it is still being discarded. And the second question is that who has discarded and who is discarding this thing, right? And in the same meeting with Gandhi, Dr. Ambedkar says one important thing. When Gandhiji says that, look, Dr. Ambedkar, you are a very patriot. Though you say that you have no homeland, you are a greatest person and you are a greatest patriot. For that, Ambedkar replies in a very, he knows how Gandhi, how Gandhi, belittles the independent agency of Dr. Ambedkar. For that, Dr. Ambedkar says that, look, this is all about my unsullied conscience, right? Through that, I am fighting for the rights of the oppressed. Through that, I am fighting for these untouchables, and I'm standing alone, right? So just take that unsullied conscience of a young scholar, young student who enters into the university. He or she wants to do that independent research on the social, on the economic and the political context, locating in the larger field of caste. Now, those research proposals were completely discarded, right? And firstly, there won't be, they won't let you in, right? So you all have seen what happened in HCU, what happened in JNU, and many now IITs and IIMs, right? So what happens when that student comes in and wants to do that independent research, right? With that unsullied conscience, right? So I think that becomes important for all of us to understand, if we are willing to have, or if we are thinking to have that method inquiry or towards understanding that pedagogy of the oppressed, probably we have to understand it in a very different way through the pedagogy of the oppressor. Because you all must have read Professor Gopal Guru's and Professor Vivek Kumar's articles in EPW, who have sort of tried to understand this question of how egalitarian is the social sciences in India or the sociology in India. And it had a lot of discussions on the subjects of phenomenology, Dalit critique, etc., in terms of democracy, academia, everything, right? But I think what becomes important is in academia that we have to draw a line, or we have to make that connection with caste and power. Probably that would make this subject possible when we are trying to understand political sociology of Ambedkar. Now, there is also another aspect in understanding the violence, justice, and the sociology of caste for any student of sociology and anthropology. Why I am bringing this aspect is all because of one statement that Dr. Ambedkar makes. So this article, when I have as a student of graduation, I have written this to Roundtable India in 2013 when I was in BA last year. So this article was titled as Selective Violence and Selective Justice. After the Patna Lakshmanpur Bate's, that verdict, I have written this article. So in this, I have mentioned this line called Ambedkar School of Thought. So are we in a position to make this Ambedkar School of Thought, to make this possible in the social science field? Because as you all know, this Ambedkar School of Thought, if we have to have that, basically it understands or it identifies that root cause of the problem, and then there will be a systematic solution to annihilate the problem. And for Dr. Ambedkar, that problem or that understanding was cast, and if we have to see those two papers in a chronology, in a scholarly perspective, caste in India, that journey to annihilation of caste, that years, I think we will understand this entire that state of mind of Dr. Ambedkar as a sociologist and as an anthropologist, right? and therein he deals with the symbol, the powerful symbol of Manu, wherein he says that it might be argued that the inequality prescribed by Manu in his Smriti is after all of historical importance. It is past history and cannot be supposed to have any bearing on the present conduct of the Hindu. I'm sure nothing can be greater error than this. I repeat, I'm sure nothing can be greater error than this. Manu is not a matter of the past. It is even more than a past of the present. It is a living past, and therefore as really present as any present can be. Now, when Dr. Ambedkar says Manu is still a living past and is really present as any present can be, probably that powerful, as we all have heard in the morning, Professor David's lecture in understanding that visual anthropology, those symbols, etc., then where do you locate the symbol of Manu, which is still there in front of the Rajasthan High Court? Now, where does that power, where does that values come from? For example, you see Manu statue, and for a Dalit woman, looking at Manu statues would be different, and for a Brahmin, looking at Manu statues would be different. And here, the Brahmin, I mean especially the Brahmin priest. So, in India, while we understand the sociology of caste through Ambedkar's school of thought, probably one needs to look at it very carefully, because in India, what we have is a very selective violence and selective justice form, or to put it in a very scholarly terminology, it is all about that representational violence and representational justice that few comparative politics scholars talk about, right? So through this, understanding the symbols, values and rituals, values I mean, because then if one goes back to what M.N. Srinivas had talked about values in his book called Social Change in Modern India, probably one will I mean, look at it very carefully what the sociologists have done in investigating these values, right? So now, to understand that ritual of injustice, which has a tradition, that is to normalize the doctrine of this superhuman who is a Brahmin, and that to a Brahmin male, I think that would set up an agenda in terms of understanding the larger subject of sociology of caste. Now, why Dr. Ambedkar is important in the field of sociology? Because, as in a very simpler term, sociology deals with the human society, anthropology deals with the study of humans or human culture in a very holistic way, right? So to deal with caste power in social and in engaging with the social, we have few insights from Dr. Ambedkar. He says that in this Bombay Legislative Council debates, B.G. Kher says to Dr. Ambedkar that, they will have a discussion there on the statements made by Dr. Ambedkar, where at the end B.G. Kher says that, look, the part can never be greater than the whole must contain the part, for which Dr. Ambedkar says, I am not a part of the whole, I am a part apart, right? So now for Ambedkar, he knows that he is not a part, he was not a part in that larger whole. So for which he thought that no, there should be a new whole which has to be created, recreated, because that Brahminical whole never respected or accommodated this untouchable part, right? So for which Dr. Ambedkar was trying to create and recreate that new whole in terms of that social, political and moral community. And here I take back again all of us to a very important review which was done by Dr. Ambedkar when he was reviewing Bertrand Russell's principles of social reconstruction. Because for sociologists, understanding individual and society relation is very much important, especially if one has to grasp the trajectory of social reconstruction. And this statement in italic is the word of is the line statement by Dr. Ambedkar, where he says that the Indian sociologists have failed to understand the relationship between individual and society vis-a-vis to social reconstruction. He says that this problem which has eluded the grasp of sociologists, and here he makes a very important distinction again related to the values that I have just mentioned going back to M.N. Srinivas, let's say his theorization of Sanskritization, his theorization of Westernization, or his theorization of secularization. What Ambedkar says is, look, survival is not important as what Russell was saying. What is important is on the plane of survival, or that quality of survival one lives, right? So I think for these reasons, if one has to locate Dr. Ambedkar's scholarly work or Dr. Ambedkar's state of mind in sociology or anthropology, one has to engage with the idea of social, because this social is something that has to be created, right? Still people are struggling, still that movements every day are forms of resistance, to put it in J. Scott's words. I think that is very much important for all of us to understand. And as you all know, Castes in India Mechanism Genesis paper had took us very, that intersectional perspective. I won't go much deeper into this, but maybe let us take that in a discussion session. But two lines that I just want to read, which the other speakers probably have missed this. So where Dr. Ambedkar says that caste in India means an artificial chopping of the population into fixed and definite units, each one prevented from fusing into another through the custom of endogamy. And look at the second. The second paragraph has that individualism, right, which I have just mentioned. But this individual is something where he tries to understand the power, the hegemony of the Brahmin self, where he says that, where he poses this question, look, why these institutions have to be honored, right? They have to be honored because they were practiced, right? And how they were practiced, again go back to the Who Were the Shudras volume, where he sort of brings in the idea of sacred literature, where he says that, look, this sacred literature is nothing but the creation of the Brahmins. Here, the text, the philosophy, everything is historicized, everything is mythified, everything is philosophized, right? Not in terms of oral manner, but in terms of text. So that is what we have done. So we have come with this recent book, the Shudra's Vision for a New Path. So in this we have dealt a few issues very, very deeply. So in this I have a chapter called Sudra Consciousness. This volume is edited by Professor Kanchayalaya and my friend Karthik Rajakarupuswamy. So now, to understand this regimes of truth, or to understand this, why these institutions were practiced and honored, it becomes very much important to go back to, or to carefully look at those sacred literature. And now, not to take much time, I'm towards the end of my presentation, that when he says that, look, this caste is something, it is multiplied with, or it has this infection of imitation, right? So I think here I would stop for a half minute, and I would take back to one of my experience in the classroom, where when I was doing anthropology course called Tribes and Other Backward Classes in India in my graduation. So there wasn't any text referred to us by Dr. Ambedkar. Then I went to my anthropology course instructor and I said, how can you include this paper, because this paper was presented in an anthropology seminar. Then he took 2 days time, and then he had included 2 texts Annihilation of Caste and Castes in India, two texts in the anthropology course. And while doing a sociology course, I had to present on MN Srinivas Sanskritization. Then I said that I was a graduate student. I was also, activist that point of time. And obviously, a few words, we may use it very loosely, etc. But I felt that what is the word of, Sanskritization? Why can't we use the word Brahminization? Because it is all that you imitate. You take that infection of imitation from the Brahmins, which Dr. Ambedkar very rightly points out in that in Caste in India Genesis Mechanism, that Brahmin is a semi-god and very nearly a demigod. He sets up a mode and molds the rest, right? For which he takes few important factors, that who is the nearest, and someone has that numerous relations and everyday practices and that prestige. But as we all have seen, that nearest has not become the dearest in India still. Yes, there are numerous relations where the marginalized communities still lift the shit on the roads, and still they are not even considered as human beings. Their death is not considered as a very important thing. So they have numerous relations, but without that dignity and respect. Yes, there is a prestige towards for the Brahmins, but as you all know, that the Savarnas or the Dvijas extract that loyalty through moral force, but not through winning the heart of the marginalized. An important thing that Dr. Ambedkar mentioned here is caste exists in a very plural manner, so does the manifestation, right? So now I think this is what the current anthropologists and the sociologists fail to grasp, this fundamental aspect that caste exists in plural manner, that heterogeneity, let's say, or in a very different way, when this current regime is creating or trying to understand, or trying to impose this monolithic entity of the Hindu world, or the Brahminical Sanatana Hindu world. I think we are not understanding this caste in a very plural manner. Let's say, or in understanding the current regime, or also in understanding the recent OBC census debate, I think most of the scholarly work, scholars have failed to grasp this important aspect. Now, why I said it is important to I think this is my last, with the permission of chair, I would just take 3 to 4 minutes, sir. I'm sorry if I'm exceeding my time. I'm really sorry. But I feel this is very important for all of us to understand the political sociology. So in this very important paper called Political Sociology in India, in understanding that, especially with regard to events, Dipankar Gupta, who is a well-known sociologist, as you all are aware, so he makes this important point, which has to be obviously critiqued, not CRATIC, CRATQE, critiqued and also investigated, where he says that yes, Indian politics, the Western scholars, or the Indian scholars who imitate the Western scholars, think that Indian politics can be reduced to the caste factor alone, where he says that no, look, stereotyping is a common enough universal disposition, but it has a greater currency in India because of the vast social economic gaps. While this is true, it must also be said that caste or sectarian consciousness does not explain everything, as the secular world and the process of secularization does not always follow these neat categories. Partly it is true that the entire caste or sectarian consciousness does not help everything, but is this to say, or is this to avoid the investigation on the caste itself? Because the decades of sociology's work indicates that yes, they haven't taken the category of caste very seriously, because as you all know, even in terms of Marxist terminology, when you take the dichotomies, that structural dichotomy, there are these two classes that are there which always fight, right? I mean, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. And here in India, obviously, to put it in Jyotiba Phule's words, it is always that Shudra, Atishudras, and the Sethji Bhatji distinction that is always made. And now, if you have to take these events as a category to understand political sociology in India, why don't you take the caste violence as a event to or the gendered violence, or that honor killings in India as something, I mean, where it explains everything? Because here, I mean, the caste or that sectarian consciousness is uniform in all the castes. Because again, go back to Caste in India Genesis Mechanism paper, it is all about that infection of imitation. So Professor Samir Kumar Das had very, I mean, in his work, in that review of literature work, he brings us to a very important category called understanding mind of the state. Now, why I brought this is because, I mean, just go back to my last slide of understanding events in Indian sociology, right? You have Veena Das, you have Dipankar Gupta, and many others who very well understood this entire process. But if you have to understand the mind of the caste, locating Dr. Ambedkar's relevance or that legacy in sociology and anthropology, I think what Professor Samir Kumar Das had said, this stands as a very important clue, because I was thinking from last 2 weeks how I have to, I mean, conclude or how I have to locate this in an entire very sociological perspective, because caste power, state also matters there. So what he says is, I mean, how we perceive the state and how state perceives itself is something very much important. Because why I am saying is this, because here the knowledge, truth in India is, as you all know, is produced or is regulated or is sustained through this sacred literature, right? And that regime of truth is something correlates with the regime of Brahminical truth, but not the Satyasodak truth which Phule, Ambedkar, Sahu Maharaj, Periyar were practicing. I think I feel that this is important, because understanding the mind of state is important, because Dr. Ambedkar poses a very important question in Caste in India, I mean, in that paper towards the end, that he says sociologists have failed, or the students of anthropology in abroad, foreign students, they have failed to understand that why occupational groups are caste. So I think if this question, if state has to take it in understanding the progress, the status of these occupational groups or caste, let's say why occupation caste. Yes, we all know that origin of that caste theory as this occupational hypothesis, all those we are aware of. But still, I think in understanding that mind of state in a very social justice perspective, that becomes important in the field of sociology. So I feel that if one has to locate Dr. Ambedkar, or if one has to recover the legacy of Dr. Ambedkar in anthropology and sociology, firstly one has to touch this untouched scholar, and one has to sort of bring in his legacy in terms of, I mean, dwelling deep into his state of mind. So I think this seminar has given an opportunity to all the, I mean, especially the land of Bengal. I think we all have grown up reading the literature of, I mean, the scholars from Bengal, especially in political science. As some of you might know, that Center for Political Studies in JNU is also known as Center for Partha and Sudipto. So I think this seminar has given a confidence to all of the young students, especially like me and many others in who are studying in state universities across or in another in any regional colleges. Look, there is still, I mean, Ambedkar has a moral world against the statement which he made very depressingly, that Gandhiji, I have no homeland. But here through this seminar, I think we are saying that Dr. Ambedkar still has a moral world, or still he has a land in this larger academia. Thank you, and thank you for caring me. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Manikantu. Excellent. We all enjoyed your presentation. So the two papers are now open for discussion. Before you gear up, let me just make three very quick points. May I say that these are the three takeaways from the two brilliant presentations. My first comment is this, that that there has been a tendency in the academic world to stereotype Ambedkar as a great polemicist. And I read one piece which says that Ambedkar has this habit of picking up quarrel with almost every politician during his time. But I think what Professor Joshi has brought home is this, that underneath the polemics, there are also insights. And it's important that these insights are brought to bear on the state of our discipline, which may be anthropology, which may be political science, which may be sociology or whatever. But it's very important to sort of tease out the general implications of Ambedkar's critique for understanding of the way we know the world. I think that that's very important. The second is this, that what came out from Professor Joshi's presentation, and I think that it's a brilliant presentation, which is this, that you, in order to be polemical, one does not have to harbor malice. In other words, if it is polemics, then it's sans malice, without malice. In other words, there is a sense of respect, the foregrounding of respect in academic debates. I think this is one of the great contributions of Dr. Ambedkar, which is often lost sight of in contemporary world, because we shout too much and we are not interested in listening to others. And what we need is listening literacy, the capacity to listen to others and respectfully express our opinions, and listen to others and then respectfully express our opinions. The third point, as Manikanto has very cogently brought home, is the way we see the world. I think the focus of anthropology has too much been on the object of research. Let the focus turn on ourselves, the anthropologists who are out in the field. And self-reflexivity is probably the need of the hour. If I do not know whether I should make this comment, but it's a sort of, at the risk of some overgeneralization, let me say that to my mind, social anthropology is perhaps the only discipline in social science which is much more self-reflexive than any other discipline, including my discipline, political science. The anthropologists who are working in the field, they are much more self-conscious and circumspect about themselves rather than about the objects that they are studying. I think that these are the three quick comments which I thought I should make before I open up these two brilliant presentations for your comments and questions. Please feel free. So let me thank both Professor Joshi and Manikanto for two brilliant presentations. Let me say that I learned a lot. It was a great learning experience for me. and let others speak out. So let there be someone inside the house who will be sort of coordinating in person.
There
I take time off and let the discussion go on.
It was wonderful both listening to your first lecture and now this full pointing out. They are marvelous in the sense that we the anthropologists learn to be reflexive about ourselves. That is our how it is embedded from the stage of selection to the end of the writing. We get and they come out very transparent. And yes, it is the need of the hour that we be more serious. In ethnography related to caste or any other hierarchy, and anthropology would contribute to the field, of course, because if not Ambedkar in a broad manner, but really in the sense of idea and ideology, that will be very much helpful. And I had the only comment regarding Manikantha. I am the person who did you, and I'm really happy. And it was a tedious attempt, and the sincerity that you reflected, and we hope the best for your future, and that will be very bright. The way you are sincerely engaged with the issue, and the way you are just continuing your activism, we hope that we will see off in any next time, because you are that valued. And Mr. Joshi, what we may say, we are just enthralled by just very much insightful that is deliberation. Thank you, Professor Joshi. Yes.
I don't know, may I make just one request that the audio at this end is very poor, particularly when you speak from the floor. May I request all other microphones to be turned off, and just one microphone that you speak into must be on. All other, please turn off all other microphones so that we don't have to hear the noise. Go ahead, please.
Any other questions? Okay, sir. I don't think we have any other questions here.
Somebody, I don't know, online from the online platform, chat box. Or if we do, I have
I request you to go over to the microphone that the announcer is using, because that voice is much more clear.
This is the same microphone, sir.
Oh, is this same
The speaker is different. Maybe that may be an issue.
Go ahead anyway.
So, Professor Joshi, actually, this seminar was your child. I mean, we discussed at length in Delhi, and actually, you suggested few speakers. So some of them agreed, some of them couldn't agree. Now, one I would like to ask you. I mean, it's a kind of question, or maybe direction. I mean, as an anthropologist, what I have, yeah, or, yeah, Ambedkar's ideas or Ambedkar's contribution in our syllabus or about the of Ambedkar. Yes.
I think, as I said, it was, like it was, Ambedkar was, excluded, not because his ideas didn't carry, intellectual merit. He was excluded, like my friend Manikanta said, he was excluded because of his caste. And I have no hesitation in saying that. We must, as I said, in India we have this habit of fusing person and caste, person and ideas into one. And that is something I think is an enemy of intellectual tradition, modern intellectual tradition in India. We must respect ideas. Individuals are of no consequence. They are mortal. Ideas are immortal. We must respect ideas. And my own understanding of reading, whatever little I know of Babasaheb, is that Babasaheb started his career as an anthropology. This must be a, I think, great lesson to all of us. And like we talk of D.N. Majumdar, we talk of K.P. Chattopadhyay, we talk of M.N. Srinivas, we must talk of B.R. Ambedkar. And wherever I'll get a chance, definitely I'm going to now make it a point to incorporate Babasaheb into the syllabi, including, I think, the national syllabus like UPSC, where again I don't see any Ambedkar. Whereas when we are talking of caste system in India, I think Ambedkar should be given its respectful place. We may agree with him, we may not agree with him. For example, I may not agree with his ideas, especially on his, origin of untouchability, where he says that he is considered a broken man. But we have to understand that his ideas were in 1916. At that time, in India, everybody was talking of Negrito problem, everybody was talking of proto-Australide, everybody was talking of this Ridley's classification. We were so much obsessed with racial classification in India at that time. So, Babasaheb's ideas have to be seen in historical perspective, in anthropological discourse, in anthropological knowledge of that time. Babasaheb used the word primitive man. We no more use it. But Babasaheb's primitive man, at that time, everybody was using this primitive man. In fact, the course that Babasaheb attended, 2 courses, they were titled Primitive Ethnology. So we have to, see Babasaheb's ideas in the context of intellectual tradition of that time. And I think if we look at it from that perspective, still I see that there are some original ideas that Babasaheb gave. And Babasaheb talked about how caste originated. And Babasaheb had the alternate point of view as far as the caste system, genesis, mechanism and existence of caste system is concerned. And that should be part of wherever I think we are having to teach caste and pageantry, caste system in India, Babasaheb should be there. Yes, Bakshi.
In different universities, we really need your for incorporating that include say.
And in the concluding, points, I would like to say that Babasaheb was great, I think, admirer of Indian intellectual traditions, especially the ancient Indian intellectual tradition. And I would just like to recollect here and tell you a lecture that he delivered in the University of Delhi, wherein he said that when the Europeans or the Britishers, they were nomadic, wearing leaves and roaming in the jungles. Indians had a very, very vibrant parliamentary tradition. So it is wrong to say that the tradition of parliament has come from West. It was very much there in India. So he was a great admirer of Indian traditions. Only thing was that I think he has seen Buddhism as a kind of pinnacle of intellectualism. And there is a downfall that he says that after that there was a downfall as far as Indian traditions are concerned. So that is what also we have to see and incorporate in our coursework in anthropology. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Joshi.
So, Monica, would you like to add?
Yes, sir. Just one. Maybe I will take just 1-2 minutes. So, thanks once again, Dr. Ambedkar, Chair, Department of Anthropology, and Professor Das. No, it is always inspiring to all of us. Young students to be part of your this scholarly activities. So one important thing that Professor Samir Kumar Das had mentioned, that look, how to be self-reflexive, whether the Indian sociology or anthropology still has that capacity to be self-respective is something that is still a question. Because so one question we used to always, especially I and two of my friends always used to discuss when we were in JNU, that look, is an ethnography, doing an ethnography in a Brahmin kitchen is possible in India. Everyone had done an ethnography in a Dalit Vadas, Dalit streets, or they have done on the dressing styles and everything. How the ex-untouchables or the other lower castes, they wear, etc. But what about doing an ethnography in a Brahmin kitchen? What about doing an ethnography in a Brahmin house? So if this holistic approach is not made, I think still the Indian anthropology and sociology cannot be self-reflexive. That is one point. And second, as Professor Samir Kumar Das has very well mentioned, that the social anthropology is the only field, sub-discipline, which is still being that self-reflexive, is something I think, many have nowadays are adopting this method of auto-ethnography, if I am not wrong. So when I asked Professor Shashi Jagde in HCU that, sir, what about, when Sundar Sarukay and Gopal Guru had come for the book talk, in the recent book talk, so I had this question on auto-ethnography to understand when people are creating, or when movements are creating this new social, how do you take a sociologist or anthropologist position as a auto-ethnography? Then for which Professor Shashi Jagde have said that no, that is a very difficult thing for any ethnographer to do. And in fact, now political science works are being published from social anthropologists in abroad. Look at Routledge series in social anthropology. Mridula Mukherjee's How India Votes, whether it is politics, whether it is about democracy, whether it is about identity, on culture, it is all the social anthropologists' work that are being published, and I think that is dominating the larger field of political science. And sir, there are eminent professors here across the universities. I think one proposal that as a student, as an activist, and also a research scholar, I want to make, because sir, there are many students, even maybe in your university, who wants to do PG in abroad, especially when people like me, we were trying to we were looking for doing a double master's in social anthropology, abroad. So we had very less opportunities. But I think in India, if all of you collectively, if you can start a course in social anthropology, I think if this seminar takes as a resolution in building that, maybe in a first level as an online mode, I think many of us will be very benefited from it, because it is not just about self-reflexive, sir, in academia. It is also about that, quality of survival in that academia, that which we want to be, to put it in Dr. Ambedkar words. Thank you, sir. Jai Bhim once again.
Thank you, Manikanta, and thank you, Professor Joshi. I think that all of us have enjoyed the two brilliant presentations, and the discussion was excellent and enlightening as well. Thanks particularly to Manikanta for suggesting that social anthropology may be included in some of the social science courses, and not just in political science. We'll certainly keep that in mind. And I completely agree that much of political science literature is informed by social anthropological writings and vice versa. So with these words, I think that we come to the end of the session, and maybe that there will be some kind of housekeeping announcement from the floor. So thank you very much. Thanks once again to the Department of Anthropology, to the Head of Anthropology, to Professor Bagchi, Dr. Ambedkar Chair, my friends and colleagues there in the Department of Anthropology. Thanks once again.
Professor Das, 1 second, Professor Das. That is, what the response or the waves that you and Manikanta just proposing, maybe little casually but seriously, about introducing such a course, maybe from distance, but we all, in a very heartfelt manner, not only appreciate it, but surely try for the best to introduce it, and for all the disciplines. With the support of our university, Samilda is there to give that is the most powerful support from not only this university, from other university and other connections, and also activists like Manikanta. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now, with this, we have come to the end of the academic sessions of our first day of International Seminar on Relevance of Ambedkar in Anthropology. On the behalf of the Department of Anthropology, University of Calcutta, I am rendering a big thanks to all our distinguished speakers and chairs who, for their gracious presence and illuminating lectures. But it is not the end. For our program, we are now going to have our cultural program, for which I will request esteemed guest faculty members and other audiences to kindly join with us near Mukto Mancho at our ground floor. We will be beginning our cultural program in a short while. I will further request our esteemed audiences to meet tomorrow once again in the Ayers Hall at 10 a.m. for academic sessions to be held in this day 2 of our international seminar. Looking forward for all your kind presence and cooperation. Thank you all.